The movement was begun by a scientist who discovered, quite by accident, these signals being sent. Please understand, they are safe as long as they are not discovered.
They want their weapon.
Look out for Charlie.
I want that son of a bitch dead. I want him dead.
It's imperative that you listen to the short story before we get to the really important stuff. So let's just get right into it. What does the word primitive mean? It simply means that a person or a group of people are considered behind or ignorant or lacking technology or advancements that another group of people has. And primitive people can exist all over the earth. They can be anywhere from 50 to 100 to 200 years behind what the West is as far as advancement and technology goes. There is a primitive group of people out there, and I'm going to tell you a story about them. Every time someone from their village would walk away to go hunting, to go away from the main village, and they would get about 2 miles out, they would later be found dead with holes forming in them. The villagers were totally confused by this, and they began to break into factions while attempting to make sense of it. It was obvious to them that these were not, spear wounds or something. This was something that they had never seen before. About a week later, after the first one is found, 2 villagers go out to leave their area on their own. And once they are about right at that 2-mile mark, one of the 2 villagers suddenly has a hole form in their body, like a larger hole. And it's just like the one that they found before, except there's a witness this time, the second villager, and he's able to run away, and he runs back to his people in shock, and he's trying to explain what he had witnessed. He explains that they are walking, and they may have heard something, but there was nothing, there was nobody. There wasn't a beast or a person. They didn't see a shadow or a light or a smell, nothing. It just, a hole formed and this guy was gone, and the villagers were now terrified and desperately trying to understand what is happening. So when they retrieve the body in the night, the holes are identical to the first one, and they confirm it. The elders in the village begin to believe that these are demons or ghosts or entities that are propelling themselves through the bodies of the villagers for something that they've done. And a third of these villagers begin to accept and believe this point of view. It really makes sense to them. It resonates, because no human or animal is ever seen when this has happened. It appears out of nowhere. So surely it's got to be some type of paranormal event. The younger villagers are a little more contemporary in their thinking, and they begin to think about these holes that are forming. And coincidentally, they're always in the chest, the gut area of the person that drops, right? And they begin to believe that this is some sort of rapid illness that is setting in. And after some time goes by, they begin to believe that there is something in their food and water. And after sick people have walked about 2 miles out in the heat with this illness, their guts basically explode with violent pressure, killing the person within seconds. And knowing that bloating exists, many of the younger villagers believe this to be the case. So there are now 2 factions of belief within the village. Either this is a supernatural thing or it's an illness. And the elders are totally upset with the younger villagers, knowing that an illness like this has never existed before and resembles nothing that they've seen in nature. They can't accept the younger villagers' reasoning to just grab this and cling onto it. And the younger will not accept that this is some supernatural entity killing these victims, right? There's a more rational reason is what the younger villagers are thinking. So as these incidents keep persisting with these villagers, the tensions grow, and there's a strong faction of villagers who begin to really boil and take great care in preparing their food and drink. And they're basically the science faction, right? Knowing that anyone who comes down with this illness will have their innards violently explode after right around 2 miles of walking out of the village. And the supernatural faction considers the science faction as like the naive kids who don't understand the history of illnesses or nature. There's like a great divide within this village. Factions of villagers begin to compile information on how to fight this illness. Every time 2 or 3 villagers head out, one seems to go down at around that 2-mile mark. So the science faction believes that by boiling and taking precautions in food preparation, they are keeping 2/3 of their population alive. 2/3, 66%. That's pretty good for such a rapid illness, right? The elders who believe it's supernatural believe that these supernatural entities hunt the villagers walking and reside around the 2-mile mark there in the trees. And when the entity attacks, the surviving villagers are able to run away from the entity's hunting ground before it can attack and kill again. But there's one loner in this village, and he doesn't think like the other villagers do. He had kept his opinions to himself since before it began, but he paid really close attention to what was happening. And although he didn't discount the spiritual realm, he knew this wasn't the work of spirits. And the entire ideology of the medical science faction had made no sense to him. Why always one? He kept asking. Why always one? Why always one? So questions like these circled his mind every day. And what began to make sense to him was greatly different than the others around him. And he finally began to speak about this. One evening, he made an announcement. He stood in front of everyone and said, "I don't believe any of this. Every time one or more of our group goes out, one doesn't come back at the exact same spot every single time. This isn't a spirit or some medical condition or illness. This is some type of weapon. And through a means we are not fully understanding, another person or a group of people have developed a way to get us from afar. They don't need to get close to us. The survivors are simply due to the fact that they are running away before it can happen again." And people began to look at him really weird, and he said, "You need to listen to what I'm telling you. They have designed something that gets us from afar. It's a weapon." And there was a long silence. And then laughs and snickers began to, wave through the groups of people. And one villager yelled, "Then explain why it's always at the 2-mile mark." And he replied, "I already did." And another villager asked, "Why would someone even do such a thing?" Although his words had left a mark and rang true with a couple of the villagers, the rest laughed it off and didn't take him very seriously. To them, it was very easy to trust their instincts. They see nothing, there's nothing there. Instantly the victim is forming holes, and unseen force is either ripping through them or it's some type of illness. What they didn't know is all the while a group of men who had come from a much more developed place were set up in the hills at about the 2 1/3 mile mark, and the scouts were shooting the villagers who came to the head of the trail to hunt any time they walked there. The man was using a high-powered hunting rifle with a scope, absolutely old technology that has been around for ages, but these villagers were so isolated, uneducated, and indoctrinated with supernatural and science silliness that they couldn't think past it. To this day, that villager is still trying to tell people that what is happening is from a gun, not a supernatural entity or medical condition. And the people are still not really listening to him. They're still in those two factions, the science faction who believes that this is some type of illness, and the other faction of supernaturals who believe that it's a demon or something. Now, listen to me very carefully. I'm the one telling you that this is a gun. Everyone else talking about entities, demons, and illnesses are the villagers. So let me not only tell you this, but let me show you, because I can't take this bullshit anymore. We are living in 2024, not 1950, not 1960. If people researched, they would realize that technology has been at work for a long, long time. In 2024, just because you hear something does not mean it's there. And I want you to think about this with everything going on right now. Whether it's hearing weapons, hearing choppers, hearing people yelling, hearing anything in a recording or live does not mean it's there. Just because you can see something does not mean it's there. This is 2024, not 1950, not even 1970, although they had this technology ripping along in 1970. It just wasn't as advanced. Let's talk about UFOs for just a second. UFO was the term, and they suddenly changed it to UAP. Why do you think they intentionally removed the word object and replaced it with phenomenon? It's to keep it within the rules of the con. Phenomenon means it doesn't really need to be there. An object is something that is actually there. Just because you see something in the sky, even if it's caught on radar, does not mean it is really an object. It can be a plasma. It can be any number of different technologies that they have tested over the last 50 or more years. You have to realize this. Stop being a villager and wake up. Now, I want you to hear a story from Missing 411, the UFO Connection. Let's check it out.
And he had some experiences. And he was allegedly told by a race of alien beings that he was to build a well, to dig a well on this location in or near Wheatland, Wyoming. He took that very seriously. He actually went out and bought himself a tank and he got the motor off it to pump the water out of this well. But he had geologists and all these other folks tell him that he was crazy for wanting to put the well where he wanted to put it because it was just a solid slab of rock. And there was no way he was ever going to get any water. But he insisted that the aliens had told him that there was water there, and by God, he was going to dig that well.
The aliens told him that there was water on his property. And he found it under a rock, right? Or in between some rocks. That's crazy, right? Let's keep going.
They did.
Boy, damn, you saying that this person digs a well and it's an offshoot from the Ogla, and the aliens told him to do it?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Now, what's really weird is they tell him to do it, and all the geologists and all those guys tell him that there's nothing there, he's crazy for doing it, and he digs the well anyway and taps in and finds the water. So the crazy guy was right.
The crazy guy was right. The aliens were talking to him, telling him to dig a well, and he did it. And there was water there on his property. So we have two grown men there on Missing 411, the UFO Connection. We have Dave Paulides and his guest talking about a guy who is talking to aliens, and they tell him to build a well on his property. He does, and there is water where they tell him to build. Interesting. The two men are talking as if there is no natural way that this could have happened. And that is the way they are talking. Two grown men are telling you that there is no way that anyone could have known this. Geologists told this guy that there was nothing there, but he did it anyway because the aliens told him to build. Now, as an investigator, you have to ask yourself a couple questions. Can someone look under the ground and see what's there? Do they have the technology to do that? And have they had the technology to do that? And the answer is yes. They have had this for 30, 40, 50 years in different forms. Now, this is an interview with Dr. Nick Begich about HAARP from 1995, almost 30 years ago. 30 years. And he's telling you that back then, in 1995, the HAARP project, or the HAARP test, could detect water, bunkers, anything underground. They could see it, tell what it was. It was like having a camera that could look underground by bouncing signals off the ionosphere and sending ELF back down to Earth, creating Earth tomography.
And it's going to come back down to the Earth at a coherent, extremely low frequency. It's going to be running in the 1 to 30 hertz range. And with instruments placed on the ground or traversing the ground and so moving aircraft, they're able to literally look down into the Earth several kilometers.
So they're able to look back down into the Earth several kilometers and see anything that they want. This is technology that they had back in 1995. Before that, well before that. But HAARP was the big project back then. Now, as an investigator, okay, now we know they can see under the ground. So surely these people that are using HAARP-like technology, HAARP or HAARP-like technology, can know that this guy has water on his property. Can people know that? Yes, people out there can know that. They can know what is on his property without him even knowing. So the second question is, are people contacted by others as aliens? Is there a history of that? And there absolutely is. If you've watched my videos before, I've played Woody Norris many, many times. Woody Norris is the inventor of a very Mickey Mouse sonic weapon.
So again, this idea of being able to put sound anywhere you want to is really starting to catch on. We've got the military had just deployed some of these into Iraq where you can put fake troop movements a quarter of a mile away on a hillside. Or you can whisper in the ear of a supposed terrorist some biblical verse.
You can whisper in the ear of a supposed terrorist some biblical verse. That is certainly the type of technology that they could use on somebody who is hearing the aliens, right? And he's telling you it exists, fake troop movements. This is why I'm telling you, you can't believe anything that you see or hear in 2024. When he's talking about troop movements, what does that mean? What does troop movements mean? It means gunshots. It means walking. It means talking. It means groups of people, the sound of tanks, the sound of vehicles. Everything encompasses troop movements. Think about that. That sound can be anything, or it can whisper in the ear of a supposed terrorist. So what he's saying is either everybody can hear it or only one person can hear it. And his is a very Mickey Mouse setup. Now they are using HAARP-like technology for the same thing as they were using for Earth tomography, to look underneath the ground. It's the same technology, okay? So is there a history, and can you talk to people as aliens? Yes. So if you begin to look up the history of people hearing aliens, there is a lot of different cases. Now this case I have talked about a few times because the guy actually kind of figured it out, right? This is the case of Greg Giles, and this article is called Greg Giles is Waking Up from Mind Control. This article starts with, "The truth shall set you free, but first it will piss you off." And that is very, very true. Greg Giles was a guy who was into aliens and the UFOs and all that, paranormal, whatever. And he wanted contact with aliens. Well, he began to have channeled messages sent to him. From who? From aliens, from the Ashtar Command. And they were sending messages to him for years. And he finally figured it out. And I'm going to read you just part of his letter here. It says, "Hello everyone, I will be taking down this blog shortly in the days ahead, as I do not want to see anyone else entrapped in the horrible U.S. government PSYOPs program that had lured me into its trap some years ago and has refused to release its clench on me and my life. At this time, I am leaving this blog up simply to get this message out to the remaining visitors, and I will hope they will share this message far and wide and reach those who have formerly followed my work." The guy figured it out. It wasn't aliens talking to him. It was something else entirely. But he believed it. He truly believed it for years, and I feel horrible for the guy. It's true. The truth shall set you free, but first it will piss you off is really, really good. So, is there a history? Is there a history of people being talked to by aliens and it's not real? Yes. Yes, there absolutely is. So, you can look under the ground and see what is on somebody's property when they don't know what's there half the time. Or you can whisper in the ear of a supposed terrorist some alien verse. So you have two grown men talking there, and they are talking together about missing 411 and the UFO connection. And this guy was told by aliens to dig a well. And they are both talking like it is completely impossible, one, to know that there is water under a big rock, and two, to receive these messages from aliens. But you have these people pretending like none of this can exist. These are grown men. And you have to wonder, let's go back to the story of the villagers. What if there were 5 villagers who began to make movies and books about the mysterious things that were happening in their village, and it turned out that those 5 villagers kind of knew that guns existed? What would you think about those guys if they knew that guns existed but just never told anybody else? Right? It's kind of weird, man. It's kind of weird. But it's not just, missing 411 and the UFO connection. There is a movement of people out there who are hell-bent on either ignoring reality completely or just deciding not to tell anybody at all about reality, to the point where people are 30, 40, 50 years behind and becoming these ignorant villagers that have no idea what's going on. You cannot trust anything that you see or hear in 2024. You have to question it, whether that's live, on a camera, on a recording, anything. Not just because of deepfakes, but because of weapons. Because of weapons that are actually at work. And why would anybody do that? Asked one villager. Why do serial killers kill? People do things for control. All of this is one big operation for control. Here's another example, and I have talked about these guys before. If you remember the video that I put out of Patriot Front being unmasked, this is the leader of the Patriot Front talking about why they wear masks.
Why wear the masks?
Masks are engaging in the practice of anonymity. And I think the government, because if we don't trust the FBI, if we think government institutions like the FBI are politically motivated and they do use people's personal information to silence them, to censor them, and not only that, but the media, you know, they talk about, oh, well, why isn't the media identifying them? Because it's really difficult for them to do so, and it's a lot easier for them to publish the types of articles that they do.
So he's actually telling you that wearing a mask gives you anonymity, and it does not. We've known for years, at least 25, right, that they can totally and completely identify you by walking gait, breathing pattern, pulse rate, or a combination of all those things together to form a fingerprint, whether that be through camera or radio waves. There's no difference when it comes to metadata like that. You can be identified. A mask does not give you anonymity in 2024. And if you want people to believe that, or if you believe that, you are so far behind you're not even in the same game. So this is another case of people completely ignoring reality or intentionally trying to subvert reality and keep people in the dark. Now again, I've told you, you cannot believe what you hear or what you see. Let me give you a more recent example. In 2020, pilots began to see Jetpack Man, a man flying with a jetpack, right next to LAX, Los Angeles Airport, right? They began to see this guy with a jetpack flying at 3,000 to 5,000 feet. 3,000 to 5,000 feet. And the FBI ran out trying to figure out what was going on. People were going hysterical because this was very close to an airport. All these videos came out about it. They talked about, could it be the military? Could it be a lone guy who bought one? Could it be somebody who's developed one? And then there was one interesting theory that caught my ear in the beginning. Somebody said, well, what if it's not a guy at all? And then they went on to say, what if it's a drone dressed up to look like a guy? Which is kind of halfway there, because you have to think about this realistically. Why would somebody fly a jetpack right next to LAX at 3,000 to 5,000 feet? They are purposely putting it there so that somebody will see it, namely pilots or people on the plane. They will see this thing and go, oh, there's a guy with a jetpack. Otherwise, you would go out to the desert and seek isolation if you were testing. The only reason why it's there is so that people see it. Why are you putting something there for people to see? You are testing. So think about it. Do you really think it's a drone or a guy in a jetpack? Or do you really think it's something like hologram technology? Because it's put there for people to see. Then they can listen to the reports that are filed and see if the technology is working or not. See if it's legit. What are they seeing? Did it look ghostly or did it look like a man? And in this case, it happened to look like a man in the sky. So again, you have all these people coming to the different theories of what this could be, and none of them ever mentioned the possibility of blue beam style technology in 2024, which is totally beyond possible. It is most likely the case. Then they could find out if it worked or not. It was put there to see. It's beyond irrational that people are ignoring the fact of where we are just because the news isn't talking about it. And I'm telling you, the minute this is acknowledged in the mainstream is the minute that everybody goes, oh, what if that's this? What if that? About everything. And that is why they are staying so tight-lipped about it. That's why it's so important to keep this as black as possible. And that's why you have people that are either unwittingly or intentionally trying to keep people in the past. We are not in 1960 anymore, 1970. We are so far beyond that. We could look into the earth 30 years ago with technology bouncing off the ionosphere. We could talk in people's ears decades and decades ago. That was the first technology. We could project holograms 25 years ago that were very, very realistic, of other airplanes, of other things, to fool enemy combatants. Well, who is an enemy combatant now? They have tested this stuff for years, and they mix it into the paranormal. People have seen all sorts of different things, and it doesn't take a pack of clowns or spooks to travel to somewhere to set up an op. When you are bouncing harp-like technology off the atmosphere, it penetrates everything, living or dead. It is there, which means you can send sound or whatever you want to any area you want from a remote location. You need to understand what year you're in. You have people in 2024 pretending that things don't exist, that you can wear a mask and keep your anonymity, that if you see the Rocket Man and his jetpack, the Jetpack Man, the Iron Man, that it's a real thing. You cannot trust your eyes, and you cannot trust your ears. You cannot in 2024, and you have to be aware of that. It is the most important thing you'll ever hear. You can't trust your senses anymore. You're going to have to check it and double check it and come to a conclusion. When Woody Norris mentions putting fake troop movements on a hillside somewhere, troop movements means gunshots, means people talking. This is what you are dealing with. We are dealing with a gun, a weapon, not mental illness or spooky spooks or aliens or Bigfoot. It's what it is. It's a weapon. And people are literally, this guy is telling you you can look into the ground 30 years ago, and people are still pretending that you can't do it, dude. What is going on, man? It is mind-blowing to me that people are ignoring this, like totally ignoring it. You can keep your anonymity with a mask on. No one can look into the ground. No one can talk to other people as an alien. If you see a rocket man in the sky, it's a real thing. You know, we are going to fall behind if people don't wake up. We are going to fall behind. And really, that's it for now. Look out for Charlie.
They're just frequencies, dude. Man-made frequencies. That's it.
No! No, 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 no! No! Not this fucking time! No fucking way! No fucking way! No fucking way! No fucking way!
I want that son of a bitch dead. I want him dead.